Welcome to the Peak and First podcast. My name is Josh, and I get the absolute pleasure of serving as the online ministries director right here at Peak and First.
Hello, Josh, and hello, everyone. My name is Sean, and I get the privilege of serving as the pastor here at Peak and First.
All right, and this is the Peak and First podcast, and this is episode 78, and this is called Running on Empty.
Wow.
Yeah.
78.
78 of them.
It's unbelievable.
Right. Yeah. We start every podcast with this week's personal best, but before we do that, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to this podcast. Just click on that like, follow, and subscribe right below, and it's a great way to get the word out, number one, and number two, there might be somebody out there that just needs to hear what we have to say today, right?
Maybe.
It may be a week from now. It may be a month from now. It may be a year from now. But somebody that needs to hear what we are bringing to you, how faith interacts with today's events in today's world.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll start with this week's personal best. This is something good that has happened in our lives this week. And Sean, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. I think I am going to talk about last night, which was a really good night at the park. It was a end of school year Unite Kids picnic last night, and nothing incredible or groundbreaking. I just, my wife and I went out. We sat in our lawn chairs and just watched the kids and the youth having a great time. And there was just something about, I don't know, spending an hour outside in the beautiful weather and seeing the youth and the young people that are, connected to our church and Grace Church, and how God is working in their lives, and thinking about, Sandra and I had some wonderful moments of just watching, and we kind of looked at each other and went, you remember those days when our kids were little and they were out running around playing football and we were at church, and, I'm grateful to be a part of a church and connected to another church here in Pekin that cares about our youth and our children. And so it was a good evening, and just good to remind ourselves that the future of the church is still bright.
That's right. And it was a beautiful night last night.
Yeah, it was.
It was absolutely gorgeous.
Yep.
My personal best, it comes on Sunday night. It was such a beautiful night on Sunday night that we sat out back on our deck probably for about the first time without all the bugs bothering us and stuff like that. It had a little breeze going, and we sat out back, and actually that was Saturday. I take that back. It was Saturday night, and Emily was outside, and she's into volleyball. She was bouncing around the volleyball, and my dad stopped by, and to watch my dad and my daughter hit the volleyball around was nice.
Nice. Yeah. Very nice.
That's an experience that you'll never forget.
Yeah, that's
you know
right.
what I mean? It's
That's
a memory we'll never forget. She'll never forget, for sure. So just some good family time for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. This is episode 78 called Running on Empty.
Woo.
We're going to talk about faith during burnout and emotional exhaustion. And I always tell you that these podcasts have a lot to do with what I have going on in my personal life. And this week, especially for me, is very, very busy. This is my busiest week of the year, my busiest month of the year, if you will. And I was already exhausted going into it. And man, I tell you what, it's hard. In every year, I should say every so often, but every year for sure at this time, I struggle with the same thing because everything in springtime, for a lot of us, everything starts to ramp up, right? So, baseball starts, and, football practice starts here in a month, and the winter sports are ending. So it kind of all collides.
Yeah.
And then you got Easter, and we have a ton going on here. You know what I mean? So all those things collide, and a person can only be so many places at once.
Right.
And that's one place at once.
Right.
And just to try to squeeze it all in is exhausting, and can wear on somebody emotionally.
Yeah.
And it can wear on your faith.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure can. Absolutely. You start spreading yourself too thin, and, faith, oftentimes our prayer life, our scripture reading, our quiet times, that's the first thing that goes, and that's really the last thing that needs to go. But unfortunately, the busyness of life tends to squish those things out, and so we have to come up with a plan on how to handle that.
That's right. And you talked in your sermon this week. You talked a lot about prayer,
Yeah.
In the church, in the start of the church, and it helped me because I prayed for during our time of prayer or our personal prayer. I prayed for time to slow down and be with God, and it's not that it's totally in God's control, but give me the wisdom
Yeah.
to slow down and spend time with you
Right.
in my faith.
Right. Yeah, that's a great prayer. And it's a guaranteed prayer request. I mean, God will give you the time. It's just a matter of whether or not you're going to take it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. We're going to focus on two key scriptures. And the first one is Matthew 11:28 through 30. And it says, "Come to me, all you are weary, and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls.
Hmm.
For my yoke is easy and my burden is light."
Yeah. Yeah. And Josh, that idea of and some people may not quite understand that it's an agricultural analogy, but a yoke is what was put on the cattle to guide them and direct them. And sometimes when you put a yoke on, you can really drive that animal really hard. What Jesus is saying, my yoke is easy. I'm going to guide you and lead you, but you need to put my yoke on and not the world's yoke. The world's yoke is going to say, keep going, keep moving, drive, drive, drive. My yoke, Jesus says, is an easy yoke. It's going to help you to rest. And I love that passage. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. It's a promise.
It's a promise. And I'm hoping, and that's another prayer is I'm hoping to adhere to that, and hoping to take that in, if you will, so that the closer I get to God, the more rest or more full my cup will be, if you will.
Yeah.
And we're also going to focus on Isaiah 40:31, and it says, "But those who hoped in the Lord will renew their strength." Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint.
Yeah, love that one too. It's a great passage. And that word hope is multiple English translations. It could be those who wait on the Lord. Some translations say wait, some say hope, and some say trust. So all three of those ideas is wrapped up in that idea. If you're going to hope in the Lord, trust in the Lord, wait on the Lord. And the waiting part is the hard one. We've talked about this before, but that's all wrapped up in that same Hebrew word, is this idea that it's not going to be instantaneous. We're going to have to carve out these times to rest. And it's during those times of rest that ultimately we begin to realize that the pattern of life that we're running is not sustainable, and we've got to slow it down, and we've got to be willing to trust in God so that He can lift us up and help us to get through these days.
It's we struggle to keep going when we're spiritually and emotionally exhausted. And we live in this culture today, just like you said, this burnout culture. Today's culture, we celebrate exhaustion. We celebrate how much can you squeeze in to one day.
Right.
And busy, stressed, overwhelmed, constantly available, right? People assume that you're successful just because you look tired.
Yeah.
And it rest almost feels lazy. And so funny story is me and my wife, we got into a couple shows that we've been watching. And I told her, I said, I feel lazy because at 8 o'clock, I'm on the couch watching a show with her. It's not really time together, but it is time together.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's a time of rest. And she goes, you gotta slow down. And I have some buddies of mine that they're into real estate just like I am, and they don't ever stop. Like they work their day jobs and then they work until 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
And I see that, and I used to do the same thing. I still do the same thing, just not till 11 o'clock at night. But I used to do that. I used to work my day job, work a night job, a side hustle, if you will, and then I would run sound on the weekends until 1, 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I I had to stop.
Yeah.
I had to stop because my health was going downhill.
Well, that's it. I mean, those guys that are driven right now. I mean, it's just there's no question that in 10 years, 15 years, they're going to be in a place where their health, their mental health, their physical health is compromised, and there's no way around it. You can't say, "Oh, I'm just going to be fine in 15 years," continuing at the pace that you're going. Not going to happen.
And we also, in today's society, we praise productivity over peace. Our phones were always available.
Yeah, right.
And I keep talking about in October, me and my wife were going to go out of town for a week and a half. And I said, well, I will be available. And, God bless my employer. He said, no, you're not. Yeah, you're not.
Right.
It will be here when you get back.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and I very much appreciate that. Unfortunately, I am going to have to be available for some things.
Right.
But he's told me to limit those things.
Yeah.
For sure.
I just wonder how many people who are listening can actually put the phone down. What, 4 hours, 5 hours without ever looking at an hour? Maybe.
Yeah. How about for a dinner?
How about for a dinner? How about we go to the restaurant and we look at each other in the eyes and have a conversation and not scroll through our phone while we're at dinner? I mean, the phones, the technology today, it's great in so many ways, but it is also, in so many ways, it has been detrimental and dangerous to our social lives and to our spiritual lives in so many ways. We talk about fasting in the church, and forever we've talked about fasting meals, fasting food. I'm telling you, I think one of the best fasts anybody can do right now is a technology fast. You just say, I'm choosing not to do social media. I'm choosing not to be on my phone for a period of time. And it's painful and it hurts, but you take that time that you would be scrolling on your phone and you devote it to prayer or you devote it to reading scripture. It's going to change your life.
Absolutely. And I wish I could practice what you preach.
I wish I could too. I wish I could too.
Hard.
It's easy to say it out loud, but man, when it comes down to it, you and just doing it is really hard, but it's so critical.
And we also talk about, you've devoted your life to you call yourself a professional Christian, right?
Yeah.
And you've devoted your life to ministry. You've devoted your life to the church. And even I always wonder how a minister, and I've been through 4 ministers here over my years, and I always wonder how you guys and ladies stay mentally, I'll say mentally stable, but mentally checked in, because you're literally always on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody in the church has your phone, right?
Right.
Well, mostly everybody has your phone. There's always a wedding or a funeral or a baptism. You've got to pre-plan those things.
Right.
So there's meetings that happen with those. There's meetings that happen around the church.
Sure.
And we have a ton going on here. So I think I see you a ton. And I know you're here more than that. You know what I mean? So I always wonder how you guys stay mentally checked in.
Yeah.
And it's about checking out when you're checked out.
That's it. It really is. I don't feel guilty any longer when I am sitting on the couch with my wife watching a program at night, and just saying, I need this. I've got to have this rest. Sabbath you got to have it. You got to have a day, a week where you just say, this is my Sabbath day. This is what God tells us to do. And it wasn't a suggestion, the Sabbath day. It was a command. And so, just trying to live into that is really important. And the Sabbath days for me are unplugged days. I turn the phone off, and I honestly, there's going to be moments where I probably will go and check it just to make sure there's not an emergency or something, because I just can't not look to see. But for the most part, I'm going to be unplugged and just focused on resting, being with God, being with Sandra, and really trying to recharge and prepare for the week ahead. Yeah.
Well, and Heather Robertson and myself, when she was here, I kind of made a funny, because when we did our personal best, I said, I got to mow this week.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that was, I mow a commercial lot,
Sure.
and it's 2.5 hours to mow this
Yeah.
commercial lot. It's a huge lot,
Right.
but I can't answer the phone.
Right.
I am literally, and I don't wear earplugs. I feel it's dangerous to wear AirPods or whatever when you're mowing, because you can't hear what you run over, especially when you're mowing a commercial mower.
Right.
So I don't do that. So it's me and the drowning sound of the mower,
Yeah.
and that is the most relaxed
Mm.
I probably am.
Right. Right.
Yep.
Yep. And I know you've said before too, just taking long drives,
Long
you know,
drives,
put the
100%.
windows down and, you know, experience nature and be quiet with God and just have that prayer time. It's so important.
Yep. And not wearing our exhaustion like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
That our exhaustion causes can cause hurt in other people, to be perfectly honest with
Yeah.
you, because the more we get exhausted, the more we are aggravated quickly, the more we are impatient.
Yeah.
I know when I'm tired because I don't have severe road rage, but I get aggravated in traffic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're absolutely right, Josh. I mean, if you're tired, it's going to affect your emotional level. It's going to affect your spiritual level, everything. I think people are really mad and really angry today in many ways because they're so tired, because they're so overworked, because they're so stressed. They're trying to make ends meet. I mean, this economy that we're living in right now is one that demands that people work extra hours and do more. It's the hamster on the wheel cycle. You know, you're just never going to get off of it. You're just going to keep running and running until you finally die. And we don't want that from people. And I'm not talking just a physical death. I'm talking spiritual death, emotional death, psychological death. You know, people are the product of a stressed world right now and a stressed life.
Yep, 100%. And you got to realize Jesus never told people to run faster.
No.
He invited them to come and rest, and like you said, the Sabbath was a command. It was not a suggestion.
Right.
Rest is biblical, not just selfish. God created the Sabbath before He created ministry structure.
Yeah.
He told people to rest, and that was first. Rest is an act of trust. God meets us in our weakness, and that one kind of hit home for me.
Yeah.
Because the more stressed out I am, the more tired I am, the more and I see it in my employees, because especially this time of year, man, we just go for it. You know what I mean? It is a nonstop, and you still got to deal with the regular day-to-day stuff. And then just for an example, you know, we had 50 houses move out. And we have to flip those in 2 weeks, and my staff they're great and they go for it.
Yeah.
But we become, the more tired we become weaker.
Yeah.
And I find myself when I am really tired, and this is where God puts people in your life for a reason. My biggest pillar when I am weak, God has put Zena, my wife, in my life to prop me back up.
Yeah.
Because in my times of weakness, in my tiredness, she is always there.
Yeah. Well, and God is as well. And I think that, and God reveals God's self through the people that we love the most always, you know. So Zena is there. My wife, Sandra, is there. And they reflect and represent God to us in so many ways, you know. And I love that you were talking about our weakness. And I just was reminded of a passage in 2 Corinthians where Paul is talking about this thorn in his flesh. You know, he says that God gave him a thorn in the flesh. And we don't know what the thorn is. It could be a physical thing. It could be an emotional thing. It could be the fact that he's a driven guy. I mean, we know that Paul is really driven to do ministry, and he's constantly on the move and constantly going. It could be that he was driven and that God slowed him down and caused him to just rest. And then it says that what Paul realized was that God's strength is made perfect in his weakness. And I love that line. Because it's in those moments where we do recognize, okay, I'm weak here. There's nothing I can do here, that God can come in and fill it and say, that's exactly what I wanted you to do, was just to stop and say, God, I need you. You know, come to me, all you labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And that's the promise.
And part of that is, as you say that, is letting go. You know what I mean? So part of that, when we hit our weakness and God, we ask God for help, God will provide.
Yeah.
God
yeah,
will provide,
Absolutely.
whether it's financial, whether it's, just like when my boss, my owner said, you know what, no,
yeah. Yeah.
it will be here when you get back.
Absolutely.
God will take care of it. It'll
Yeah.
be okay.
Right.
Um,
And he may not provide in exactly the way you think he's going
Right.
to provide, but the promise is always that he will provide. Again, Scripture says, "Oh my God, supply all your needs according to His riches and glory." Yeah, the promise of Scripture is that everything that we need, God's going to provide. Not everything we want, but everything that we need, God will provide for us. So we just trust that, and it's such an easy thing to say out loud to just trust God. Those who trust in the Lord will renew their strength. They mount up with wings as eagles, run and not grow weary, walk and not faint. That passage you just read from Isaiah 40. It's so easy to quote that, to say it out loud, but then to do it. And that's what I want everyone to hear today is you got to make the effort. I mean, God is not going to do this for you. You might hear us talking about this and say, wow, that just sounds real easy. And really, it is easy, but we got to do it. You got to make yourself say, I'm stopping now. I'm not going to feel guilty about this. The next time somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm not going to say busy, 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 because that's not a marker of success. And I think that what you're saying is so true. We look at that as a marker of success. Like, I'm really busy, therefore I'm successful, or there's something really good about me, and not a good marker of success.
Well, and so you say that because then I'll ask me how my day was. What's the first word out of my mouth?
Busy.
Busy.
Busy. Yeah.
And finally, she's like, "Can we do a little more detailed than that?"
Right.
I want, and it's that support thing, right?
Yeah.
She wants to be able to support me.
Yeah.
So I find that funny because she gets on me. Gets on, I say gets on, but she's like, "Okay, you're busy. What?"
Right. But it's a natural response from us. I think we just we've grown up in a culture that says, if you're busy, then you're doing something right or you're successful. And so we pride ourselves on the fact that we had a busy day. We were really busy today. If I go home and she says, Sandra says, "How's your day?" And I say, "Oh, it's kind of boring. I didn't really do much of anything today. I just sat around." I'm not going to feel very good about that. That's probably not something I'm going to want to say out loud. I'll come up with some excuse to say, well, it wasn't super busy, but man, I was kind of busy. We're gonna do that just because of our pride, and we got to stop that.
Yeah, 100%. So as we move along and we get into the real life application, so as you start to maybe think about how can I change me, or how can I lean into God to help me not be so weary and not be so weak in the moment, or to help me fill my cup. And that is one of my constant prayers. God, help me fill my cup. And that is to rest without guilt. Just like my wife said, it's 8:00 and we're in bed by 9:30, or at least heading that way by 9:30. So it's not a lot of time. It's an hour and a half, and it's not every night. You know what I mean? But rest without guilt. Take those moments, just like we both just talked about those moments. You talked about the picnic for the Unite kids, and I talked about sitting on the back deck and watching those are restful moments, and don't feel guilty about those.
Right.
Take those moments. Ask for help, and this is red flag me, right? I'm a control freak, and I know this. I know my weakness, and that is I can just do it myself faster, right? That's a constant. Ask for help. God puts people in your life, and it may not be done your way, but it'll get done.
Sure.
Just like you trust in God. It may not come the way you ask for it, when you pray for it, but it will come. Right. And spend time with God before productivity.
Yeah.
You are not a productive person without God.
Yep. Start your day. I mean, before you even get out of bed, even if it's just a simple little prayer. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for waking me up. Use me today. Let me be focused on what's important today. Help me not to get overwhelmed with work today. Whatever you need to say, but start the day that way. You focus your attention on God, then everything else is going to take care of itself.
Right. Sometimes faith looks like less like running and more like resting in God.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing wrong with it at all.
Nope. And if you are interested in taking a little break and maybe talking to some folks, we do have the Open Table Cafe coming up, and that is June 6th.
Yep, week from Saturday.
Yep, week from Saturday, June 6th. Open Table Cafe. Come just visit take a minute, rest. When you do ministry, this is a restful time for me, even though I'm busy making graphics and doing the Throwback Thursdays, which I didn't get done this week. It'll be okay, right?
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Right.
But because I enjoy doing this is a restful time for me.
Right.
And being in ministry with you, if being in ministry and doing things like the Open Table Cafe or a Bible study, those are times of rest with God.
Yeah.
So get involved. You can get involved here at Pekin First. We have plenty of Bible studies. We have the Open Table Cafe. We have the 200th anniversary coming up. We have a need for volunteers for the block party, and we have a day of volunteer coming up in August, or a volunteer day or day of serving coming up in August. There we go.
Yep.
And all kinds of opportunities for you to get involved here at Pekin First.
Yeah. So much that you can do, but again, we don't want to overwhelm anyone with
Sure.
it. But as you say, sometimes that's the most restful thing you can do, is to actually get involved and serve in some capacity, or just attend. If you just want to come to worship,
Yes.
you take an hour on a Sunday morning. Maybe you say Sundays is the day that I really am busy. I do an awful lot of stuff because I work all week, but Sunday's the day I do this. Maybe you take that hour on Sunday and say, I'm giving that to God today, whatever that might be, or Saturday night for our service, whatever. Just find time to be with God.
Yep. And guess what you can't do in church? Answer your phone.
Yeah. You can. Well, you can.
You're not supposed to.
Yeah.
All right. That will do it for us this week on episode 78. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to this podcast as well. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah.
Any other last thoughts?
No, thank you for this one today, Josh. This is good stuff, and I hope that you'll share it with others. If you know of people that are just running on empty right now, share this with them. Hopefully it can help them out and point them in the right direction.
Absolutely. All right. And remember, God put us here to do great things, so let's go do great things.